of talks promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, I am so very happy to be here because we're hosting this talk by our dear friend and member of the United States Spiritist Federation and Board of Directors, LIGIA Carvalho. Ligia will be talking to us today about Christ the Consoler. Before we turn into Ligia, I would like to take a moment to do an opening prayer. So if we could all just close our eyes. Let's just take this opportunity to open our hearts, open our minds to all the spirits of lights who are here today with us, along with our benefactors who guide us during journey on earth. May you all be blessed. May our dear friend Ligia receive the inspiration during this talk, and may all of us be touched by her words of wisdom. So be it. Ligia, welcome.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you
Hope
so much for inviting me.
Hope you're doing so well. And it is so good to have you here today to talk about Jesus, right?
Yes,
Jesus and
yes.
his role as a consoler. This is such a relevant topic, especially during this pandemic, and so many of us dealing with different types of loss. So thank you so much, Ligia. Before Ligia begins her important message, I would like to allow to myself to formally introduce her. Ligia Carvalho is the secretary and the coordinator of the Spiritist Education Department and Bookstore for the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey. And Ligia co-founded that group, and she coordinates to date with a group of close friends. She's an active participant in the U.S. Spiritist movement as a speaker. She's also a member of the United States Spiritist Federation, and she serves as the Family, Youth, and Children's Spiritist Education Director, the FIXI department. Professionally, Ligia is a licensed therapist with over 10 years working with children and adolescents. She works with those with behavioral and mental health problems, and currently she works with the terminally ill as a hospice social worker. I would like to remind everyone in the audience to please send your questions. We have allowed time for that once Ligia concludes her presentation. So Ligia, please go ahead and get started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcia. Once again, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the United States Spiritist Federation for this invitation. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to be here and talk a little about Spiritism, and specifically Jesus. Just like Marcia, how you mentioned, in this time of difficulties and the many challenges that we are all facing, Christ has been, or could be, that solace, that force that keeps us all hopeful and looking forward to better days. So the goal of studying this chapter of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Christ the Consoler, is with the hope that we will find more meaning and a better understanding of his message to bring us that hope. So when we go into this chapter, right off the beginning, we read, "Come unto me, all you who suffer and who are overburdened, and I will comfort you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me that I'm gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So this message is extremely inspiring and, like the words say, comforting. But sometimes at first, it's difficult to understand. So if we start off with the first phrase, "Come unto me, all of you who suffer and who are overburdened, and I will comfort you." Here, those words of Jesus, they bring us a certainty. If you come to me, if you seek me out, if you look for me, I will comfort you. It is not, I might help you, maybe there's something that I can do. He gives us the certainty that whatever may our issue be, whatever our sorrows or difficulties, there is something that he can do. But it's interesting and important to focus on the word comfort. If we think of the word comfort, it means the easing or alleviation of a person's feelings of grief or distress. So here we come to learn that he can comfort, meaning he can alleviate, he can diminish, but the pain or the challenge or whatever the situation may be may not necessarily fully resolve itself. And it's important for us to keep in mind, because frequently we sort of have the expectation that if you do right by God, if we do right by the laws of divinity, if we follow the teachings that Jesus has brought us, why are we still struggling? Why is there still suffering in the world? And that's part of what we will learn today through this chapter. So he comes and he says, I will make you feel better. However, there are things that we still need to face. And then the second paragraph, he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me that I'm gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Once again, take my yoke upon you. And first we need to understand, what is a yoke? The yoke it's sort of a wooden frame. It's long. And what it does is it is used to hold two animals, usually two cows or horses. So there's a middle part, it's like a T, and that rests on the shoulders of the animals as they work together, pulling something or carriage or whatever it may be. So he says, take my yoke upon you. Once again, here he's giving us direction. What is the way to find me? And what is the way to be able to receive my comfort? Take my yoke upon you. He's saying that whatever our sufferings are, whatever our challenges are, the moment that we take his yoke, he's journeying with us. It's almost like that passage of the footsteps on the sands, where, you know, this man is grieving and upset because everything is going wrong in his life, and he can see his life through the sand. And through most parts of his life, he saw two sets of footsteps. But at one point, he looked back and he noticed that at moments, there was only one set of footsteps. And he questioned. He said, Jesus, you said you would always be with me. And now I look back and I see that in the most challenging moments in my life, I was alone. You weren't there for me. And Jesus looks at him and says, my child, look closer. During those moments where things were the most difficult, the most challenging, those were the moments that I carried you in my arms. So that poem, it's the same here. At this moment, Jesus is saying, if you come look for me, I will give myself to you, and we will share that same burden, but you will carry your parts, and we being tied together in this yoke, I will guide you. I will show you the way. I will lead you towards the way of happiness. You will have to walk yourself, but he will guide us there. And then he goes further. You will find rest for your soul. So he says, if we follow the path that he is showing us, if we willingly take upon ourselves to do what he recommends, we will find the rest that we need. We will find that moment to re-energize, to take a breather, to refocus, and be able to assess, what is it that is going on in my life? Which direction do I need to take? So it's very powerful. But once again, a lot of it shows the need for us as individuals and eternal spirits to having the willingness and the motivation to make a change. Many times we have erroneously believed that simply by praying, you know, we will have our answers to whatever it is that our sorrows are. Yes, we need to first seek out, and prayer is that first step, but then we must take the yoke upon ourselves and make a change in the direction that we give our lives. And that's how we can find consolation, by making a change in direction. So which way to go? How do we make that change? So we see that Jesus has brought us a lot of information. And he also, in this chapter, said, "And I will pray to my Father, and he will send you another consoler, so that he may remain with you forever, the Spirit of truth." And he goes a little further and says, "The consoler will teach you all things and will enable you to remember everything that I have said to you." So here again, not only did Jesus come and lived with us for those years and exemplified and taught us that path, that way, but he also realized that at the time that he came, we as human beings, as a society, as a world, we were still very immature. We're still very challenged in the way that we could understand things of greater relevance, things of greater depth, things that are associated to our spirit and not so much to the immediate need of survival of his time. So he came and he brought us that hope and that teaching of loving God as our Father and loving one another as brothers and sisters. But then he also said, "I will pray that he will send you another consoler," because he knew that as a society, we would evolve. And as we evolve, there would be a need to know more. So that consoler is a Spirit of truth that would bring us, like he said on the second paragraph, teach you all things and will enable you to remember everything I have said to you. So now through this Spirit of truth, this new consoler, we would be able now to better understand all the things that Jesus has brought to us and go further into other things. Because Jesus purposely didn't teach us everything because he knew at the time it was more than we could handle. Already what he brought us, we still struggle nowadays to understand. So this Spirit of truth, this consoler, came to enhance and broaden that knowledge. And it's interesting, in a passage in the posthumous works of Allan Kardec, I think like every human being, Kardec exchanging a conversation with the Spirit of truth, he asked, and so who are you? What's your name? What should I call you? And I think that's part of the curiosity that we as human beings in the way of progression have. And the Spirit of truth said to him, "I have already told you, I am truth. To you, this means discretion. You will know nothing more about this." Once again, bringing that the importance is the message and the teaching, because there's a lot of contemplation. Is this, who is the Spirit? Where does he come from? But the truth is, he comes to bring us the message that Jesus has granted us of knowing more about his teachings, which bring us an understanding of God's divine law. And if we understand, and if we apply these understandings to our daily life, we will reach the greater consolation and the easier ability to walk with Jesus. So how did he bring this message? How is this consoler expressed in our daily living? And this is where the beauty of Spiritism comes alive. Spiritism has come to open eyes and ears because it speaks without figures or allegories. And in studying Christ the Consoler through the prism of the Spiritism doctrine, it's like unraveling a world of infinite opportunities to find our meaning and to find our sense of existence. Because now, not only can we go back and truly understand what it is that Jesus was teaching when he said what he said, but also we can move forward and be able to incorporate the reality of everything that we are living today in this world and within ourselves and find meaning. And for all of us, life, a lot of it is about finding a meaning, finding a purpose to continue to exist. And through the Spiritism and the enlightenment that it brings, we can have a better understanding of that. It says, it lifts the veil intentionally left over certain mysteries. So some of the things that we couldn't understand, some of the things that really made us struggle, and in particularly, Some of the things that we will discuss today is suffering. Why do we suffer? Why people die young? Why children die young? Why is there disease and terminally illnesses? Why are there so many things in the world that bring us suffering? So it says, Spiritism has come to bring supreme consolation, attributing a just cause and useful purpose to all pain. Now, when someone hears this, just cause and useful purpose to all pain, it is only natural that somebody can, take a look and what does that mean? Does that mean that we have to suffer? Does that mean that suffering has, it's a requirement for evolution? Does it mean that people suffer for what reasons? How can it be fair or just? And these are some of the questions that we face with every day. If we take a moment now to think about this pandemic and think about the number of people that have been negatively affected, whether it has been through losing a loved one, whether it has been through their own struggles in medical and physical challenges, whether it has been through financial loss, and consequently, the loss of basic needs. How can that be fair? How can that be just? And Spiritism brings us the understanding of how does the laws work to bring that justice. Because you think of it, when he says, upon those who expect nothing after this life, or who simply doubt afflictions bear down with all their weight, and no hope comes to soften their bitterness. And one of the things we read in the beginning when he said, come unto me, and I will comfort you. He brings us hope, and he says that there's more to life than what we see in our everyday lives. And that's an important piece of Spiritism. It comes to teach us that life is not measured by this only existence. It is not just between birth and death, but we have the before, our previous lives, and we have the after, life in the afterlife, but also the opportunity to reincarnate. So the belief in multiple existences comes to bring a different perspective that totally shifts the paradigm of how we see our existence. But if we don't believe in this, if we believe that nothing exists after this life, that the only purpose of life is, like we said, the time between birth and death, then it totally makes no sense to have any type of difficulties or challenges. It makes no sense that illnesses should come. It makes no sense to try to abdicate ourselves or to forego of things in behalf of other people. Then why not live an existence of pleasures and self-indulgence? Because once we die, there's nothing, so I must enjoy everything. And then when difficulties come, that's when your faith and your belief makes a total difference. And, believing that all people here today, either you are spiritists or you are somebody who has a liking for the Spiritist doctrine or has a spiritual view in some ways. Some of this information is not new, but look again, it says, who simply doubt. And there's plenty of people that they believe, but they don't fully understand. So there's always a sense of insecurity and uncertainty. So if we live a life where there's nothing after, or we are constantly doubting, it becomes very difficult. And this is something that I see every day at the work that I do, working with individuals with terminal illnesses from anywhere from their late 20s to their late 90s. And it doesn't make a difference. Sometimes we think, oh, if you're 95, you've lived a whole life, so you better ready, you're more ready, you're better prepared to leave this world. And it doesn't happen that way. What we see that makes the difference is the belief that we have about what happens to us after death. And that makes all the difference, because those individuals that do have a belief, and they believe that there's some form of life afterwards, there's some form of justice, they may be scared, they may be sad, they may be struggling with letting go, but they are better prepared and they're less afraid, less anxious, and usually they're not angry. On the other hand, those individuals that think that there's nothing else, they are frequently very much angered, and it's a moment of anguish that lasts for the duration of their condition, because they cannot understand, why me? Why did this happen to me? Failing to understand that there are other things, and it becomes very difficult for them and their loved ones, and there's nothing that consoles them except the wish for that to come sooner. And they become so enraged that it becomes a very miserable existence. And that passes on to their loved ones and their family members. So we see how this belief system of nothingness can create such a state of disconsolation and discrediting and misery at times, that people are not able to function. So to know that there is hope for what? That all types of sufferings can find their consolation in the words of Jesus and the understanding of divine laws. It's like winning the lottery every single day of our lives. In two ways, or the two primary ways that Jesus brings us to have the ability to develop this trust, to have this belief, is having faith in the future and trusting in God's justice. And we're going to talk about each one of them a little more to help hopefully integrate, because we believe, but like the paragraph above said, sometimes we have doubt. Maybe especially in those moments where things are difficult, we may question God, question the spirits. How come? Why me? Is this really true? So what is faith? Faith means the confidence one has in accomplishing something, the certainty of achieving a particular purpose. So it's this belief system that no matter what, that we're going to go somewhere, that we're going to get something. And if we have faith, not just in the future, but in the words of Jesus, where he said, I will comfort you, we know that if we stick to our path, the one that he has guided us through his yoke, if we stick to that path, we will achieve consolation, and we will achieve the alleviation of our sufferings. It's knowing that the words that he has said are true and that we trust in them. True faith allies itself with humility. Those who have it put their trust in God more than in themselves. It's once again acknowledging that we are still imperfect spirits working towards our evolvement and working to become enlightened. And just like children who have to trust their parents, their guardians, who usually know best, we have to believe that God is our loving Father, and he's looking out for us, and he knows best. And that not all challenges are necessary sufferings or a means of, expiation or sinfulness. Challenges are also learning experiences. And if I put my trust in God, knowing that he knows best, I know that he is looking out for me. And when the time comes, whatever problems there are will be resolved, and that lesson will be learned. It also says that faith, divine inspiration from God, awakens all the noble instincts that lead humans towards the good. It is the foundation of regeneration. When we are closed off, when we are focusing only on our problem or problems, it is very difficult for us to see how that can be expanded into something different. And it also makes it difficult for us to see opportunities or ways out that maybe are not so clear. but that they are there because we are so focused. It reminds me of a story of this child. He comes home very upset. He had all these troubles in school, and he's not really knowing how to figure them out. And when he gets home, his mom is home. And she said, you know what? How about let's make a cake? That way we can, distract you, can tell me all about your problem. Sit here. Do you want a snack? And the kid goes, yes, Mom, I want a snack. And she goes, here, have some oil. And he's like, Mom, I don't want oil. It's yucky. All right, so have a piece of this butter. And he goes, what's wrong with you, Mom? Butter by itself, it's nasty. Fine, let me give you some eggs. And he's like, okay. He's like, here, eat your eggs raw. And he's like, Mom, what's wrong with you? And she goes and explains, you see, eggs by itself, butter by itself, flour by itself, all these items alone, they are not pleasurable and they don't seem to make any sense. And it's not something that you want. But when you combine them in the right measure and in the right order, they make a delicious cake that you love to eat. And that's the same thing with life. Sometimes it's a financial problem. Sometimes a marital problem. Another time it may be a health problem. All these things by itself, they seem pointless at times. And we cannot figure out why all these things. And sometimes many of them are happening at once and you're asking yourself, can I handle it? Why is this happening to me? But if we have faith, if we take a step back and we trust in God, we will understand that these events, they're recipes for my betterment. They're recipes to allow me to change my direction, to reflect on my behaviors, to assess what are the priorities that I have in my life, to help us to awaken our noble instincts that lead us towards the good. When we're comfortable, when things are going well, why are we going to change? Everything is good. So sometimes coming out of that comfort zone or experiencing challenges is a way to awaken in us our potential as this perfect individuals, perfect spirits that we are meant to be. So yes, difficulties, they will come. But once again, if we have faith and if we open ourselves for the inspiration from God, we will find answers and we'll be able to awaken and develop these abilities that maybe were dormant. And it goes further. In order to be profitable, faith must be active. It must not grow numb. So we have to take action, just like in the beginning when Jesus said, take my yoke. And then we need to walk next to him. So believing is the first step. Believing and understanding what is this message. But we must live it. We must act on it. Because otherwise it's just theories that we look at. But theories on paper, on our minds, if they don't translate into actions, they will not have the ability to bring us that consolation that we're looking for, and it will not bring the ability to make change. So trusting in God's justice is the same way. If we understand his justice and we understand how he functions, it strengthens our faith in him, because faith, it only works when it's combined with our intellect. One of the beautiful things about Spiritism is it does not tell you to just believe. Take this because I said it. I am the spirit of truth, or I'm this. No. It asks that we think about things, that we go through them and question to understand. It does not want us to be a blind individual that just follow what is told us. The goal is for inner enlightenment and growth so that we can evolve as spiritual beings. So understand God's justice is a part of it. And Jesus said, the compensations that he promises to the afflicted of the earth cannot occur except in the future. So right now we have to acknowledge that we live in a world of expiation. yes, it's moving towards a word of regeneration, but we're not there yet. But even if we're there, it means suffering is still a necessary part of the growth process. Once again, Jesus said that he can comfort, meaning alleviate, to ease, but we are not yet at a point where struggles are not a part of our daily living. This life, absent of these struggles and suffering, they will be a part of our future when we have evolved much more. So what we can see, and if we study, is there are two different causes for our afflictions. The first one are the current causes. If we think about the reasons why we are suffering, the greater majority, the gospel says, are a result of actions and decisions that we have made in this lifetime. So we cannot blame a prior lifetime, we cannot blame obsessors, we cannot blame anything. It's just a consequence, a result of decisions that we have made in this lifetime. While described by that phrase, if I only had or had not done this or that, I would not be in such a conundrum. I would imagine that every person watching today would be able to look back in their lives and think of, and it doesn't have to be big things, but I think all of us have things in our lives that if we could go back, we would make it different. We may not regret it, but we know that we could improve it. Some of us may have regrets. And these afflictions that we suffer today are a result of those decisions that maybe weren't the best, that maybe, we didn't think through the lines of our spiritual being. Once again, maybe we thought of it from the perspective this moment in this lifetime. And it does bring a lot of challenges and it brings a lot of difficulties. But at least those we can explain. Those, when they happen to us, at least we can go back and see a moment when it happens, a moment where we made the decision. But when we go into prior causes of affliction, for example, like I said, when somebody's born with a medical condition, when people pass away and die on unexpected circumstances at a young age, when financial things happen, we don't know. There's nothing in this lifetime that can explain, why am I going through this? And I see that a lot of times, once again, working with the terminally ill, people not understanding, not have a beliefing system many times. I was healthy. I exercise. I didn't smoke. I don't do drugs. I don't do all these things, as if sickness, disease, and suffering is only aligned with ill behaviors. And what we see is Spiritism comes and helps us to remember and learn through the axiom that says, every fact has a cause. Therefore, what we can conclude is, if the effect is positive, the cause is positive. If the effect is negative, the cause is negative. Nothing happens that is not related to something. And then we can go. If the cause is not in this lifetime, it must be in the prior lifetime. And that's why the understanding and appreciation of the teachings of Jesus, and further enhanced and clarified by Spiritism, brings us the belief system and the awareness that the law of cause and effect, meaning you do something good, just like the axiom, something good happens. If you do something not so good, then you have to deal with the consequences and correct those mistakes. But reincarnation also brings us an understanding that things that I haven't finished up in the other life, they prop up today to help us finish things that are outstanding. So through justice that is strictly meted out, humans bear what they made others bear. And it's interesting, in one of the books of André Luiz, it tells a story of this couple. So there was a wife and the husband, And she was at a much better place spiritually than he was. And they were meant to work together, the differences as a couple, as a family, and through the hardships of the relationship between them and the dynamics of the family and life experience, to learn to sacrifice themselves for each other and learn to eliminate some of the egotistical inclinations that they had. But he wasn't strong enough, and he couldn't find the strength and the motivation to remain in a relationship, and he fled. He left, and he abandoned his wife, and he became involved in deleterious behaviors. And in this process, he became involved with this young lady, and not only did he bring her, and through his influence led her to a very sad and negative path in life, he did the same thing with her sister. So instead of being a support to these two women, he deviated them through his influence, and they also end up in a very negative situation at the end of their lives. Her, in the meanwhile, she had a strong faith, she had a strong belief, and she was able to rebuild her life. She found another partner, she rebuilt a relationship. She was going through life like we do every day, facing each hardship with honorable behaviors. And time passed, and her first husband got sick. He wasn't committed to working, he wasn't committing to a life of responsibilities, so he had no resources. He really didn't have friends, and he had nowhere to go. And he thought, oh, I bet my first wife is waiting on me. She was so good, she was so dedicated. She probably will take me back. So now he abandons those other two women as well, who also have lost their way, and he goes look for his first wife. And to his surprise, what happens? He finds her reestablished in a happy marriage and doing, well. He becomes so angered with jealousy and hatred that what does he do? He kills her husband. So you think of it. How many lives have been impacted? Now let's push forward. They all disincarnate. We plan a new reincarnation. And now what happens? She decides that not only will she help him, she will also help the two young ladies. So now the new plan is she will come once again as his wife. Her second husband, who had been a source of support and a friendly spirit, would come as her first child to be a helper and a supporter, because the two ladies would become her two daughters. And they would come with very difficult inclinations, and so the husband too. So between her and her now son, they would be the solid forces within the family to help them overcome their negative inclinations. But once again, the husband was not ready to make that change. He felt that he was locked in. He felt a prisoner in that family. And he thought of leaving, but he couldn't bear the thought of leaving the two daughters. Because guess what? Him and the son, they did not get along. It was such a heated relationship, so much antagonism. It was a son, but he didn't like him. So one day, he planned. He said, I will kill my wife, I will abandon my son, and I will run with my girls because I cannot live without them. So one night, when he's planning to take action, the spiritual guides of that family intervened, and they woke up his little girl, and she starts crying and screaming. The wife runs in and sees him with a gun. And being the good heart that she had, she thought, oh my God, he's going to take his life. At no moment did he think him capable of doing something worse. And she tells him, if this is too much for you to bear, go, leave. I let you go. Go be happy. He's so ashamed and so taken by the energy of nobility and elevation from her. He runs scared, and he leaves never to come back. And now she's faced with life as a single mom, taking care of her son or her 3 children. So we think, if we look at this current reincarnation alone, and we see all her suffering and all the challenges and all the dilemmas that she has faced and the kids are facing now, we can think, how unjust, how difficult, such a good woman. But if we go back on the past lives, we see that everything is meant to bring us the opportunity to make amends, to improve on things that weren't well resolved. The story goes on, and we don't really have the time, but in summary, she receives the support and she grows so much from this sacrifice that she has chosen to take upon herself to help these human beings, that she grows spiritually a lot, to the point that when the next reincarnation plans come, the husband no longer married to be in the same family or in the same relationship with her. He now has to go back and begin again with other relationships, with other spirits that are aligned in his same level of functioning, to one day be able to earn the right to be with her again, to resolve these pending issues. So we see that through the effects of the law of cause and effect, Jesus teaches us that God has a justice system that is infallible, and he only gives us things that can help us grow. So it becomes a matter of how we interpret these situations and how we take them upon ourselves. We're not saying that we are not going to be sad. We're not saying that it's not going to hurt or that we're not going to have moments of depression. What we are saying is that we are going to be able to face these problems void of rebelliousness, anger, or a desire for justice, or a constant state of depression and inability to continue. Yes, that would be difficult days, but we will be able to move on because, once again, like we said in the beginning, the comfort that alleviates and gives us hope and the certainty of a better future will be there guiding us and helping us to move forward. So Spiritism is the new science that has come to reveal to humans, by means of irrefutable proofs, the existence and nature of the spirit world and its relation with the corporeal world. And we can now see that our lives is just like, not trying to minimize, but like the baking of a cake. If we want to one day become something beautiful, something of importance, someone who's evolved, it will take the hard work or everyday experiences through many reincarnations. And some of these experiences, just like the husband will be facing, are the result of his negative decisions that were based on selfishness and the lack of insight about our spirituality. Others, just like the mother, the wife, they will be out of a sense of goodness in our hearts, try to help those around us. So not all challenges and difficulties are a punishment in the sense or the correction of errors. Some of them are a stepping stone to a better tomorrow. So the Spirit of Truth said, "O spirits, love one another. This is the first teaching. Educate yourselves. This is the second teaching." And we're going to take just a few moments, because we are coming to the end of our session, to talk about this educate yourselves. How can we take control over our lives? How can we improve or make changes so that we understand that path through the yoke of Jesus and develop a new way? And one of the first things is to remember that we are in control of our lives. Yes, divine law will sometimes limit, but we do have free will and we have the ability to make a change. So certain things in our life will need to happen because they are the consequences of prior actions. But how we respond to them beginning today will determine tomorrow. And that is a choice that we have. I can decide what to do with what circumstances in life presents to me. Just like this very simple story. It tells of this old farmer, and in his farm there was a dried well, and one of his donkeys fell in that well. He tried so many different ways to try to get that donkey out of the well, but eventually, after hours, he just gave up and he said, you know what? This donkey is old. This well had been in need of filling for so long. Might as well take care of two things at once. He called his farmer friends, and they all started to, one at a time, throw dirt into the well where the donkey was laying down on the bottom of it. And at first, the donkey started shrieking and screaming and crying because he realized what was about to happen to him. And then after a while, they noticed the donkey got quiet. And they got curious, what is going on? And they looked. And they saw that every time that somebody threw a shovel of dirt into the well, the donkey would shake it off and step up. He would shake it off and step up. And soon, all the farmers understood what the donkey was doing, and they were amazed. And after a couple of hours of throwing dirt into the well and the donkey shaking it off, the donkey climbed himself out of that hole and went running free in the pasture. And that's the same thing with us human beings. Sometimes when we have so many problems, we may feel like we're down on the bottom and we feel like there's nowhere to go and the hole is too deep for me to dig out of. Like there's nothing else to do. And that may be where you are right now. There may be how you feel or somebody that you know. But once again, what Spiritism tells us is we can choose to sit there and let further dirt fall into us, meaning the challenges of life, the troubles, the disagreements, the frustrations, or we can use each one of those to be a stepping stone to get us out of that place. By doing what? Educating who we are, changing our way of being. And we learn that it is through education more than learning that humanity will be transformed. Again, from the posthumous works of Allan Kardec. And only education can reform humankind, who will then have no more need for harsh laws. I'm going to move a little further. And I'm just going to quickly bring some of the differences so that we can understand what we can do. Educating ourselves is different than learning. And a lot of times we have focused our attention on learning. Oh, I read, the Spirits book every day. I listen to at least 1 or 2 lectures per week. I go to the Spirits Center. I read, the literature. That is learning, where we develop our intellectual values and we gain knowledge. It illuminates our minds because it gives us the information we need to understand things. But true education is where we need to develop our moral values, the values of our character. And that can only be done through inner transformation, when we develop the power of our spirits. And just like exercising, we need to flex our muscles. Challenges, they are those weights that makes us exercise the muscles of our spirit. Once again, we said before, if we're too comfortable, then there's no reason to change. So things will happen in our lives, some very difficult, some not so difficult, but all of them have the goal of bringing what? An awareness. Maybe I'm a little too impatient. Maybe I'm a little too quick-tempered. Maybe I'm a little too self-centered. Maybe I'm a little too this and a little too of that. It brings us the opportunity to do self-reflection. And God and the spirits teaches us, He doesn't want us our suffering. He doesn't want our pain. The pain only comes to be a red flag, a symptom to help us once again going back to the beginning of our lecture, go unto Jesus, take his yoke upon us, and change the direction of our lives. So if today you are facing some form of difficulty, if you are facing some form of pain, be what it may be, it may stem from hardships or simpler things. Whatever those situations are, they are an alert system blaring through your life to tell you, seek out Jesus, seek out his message, and take his yoke, because he will teach us the way. It's about changing the way that we conduct ourselves, changing the direction that we are giving to our lives, and most importantly, changing our priorities. Our society, and speaking particularly to those who live in the United States, we live in a country who gives us so much accessibility to financial, material things, and who lately has put such an emphasis on self-pleasure that we forget that life is not this material body, and it's not meant to be a moment of enjoyment. It doesn't mean that we can't enjoy it. Yes, we should be happy and have fun, but enjoyment should not be our purpose. It should not be our goal. The goal is for us to educate ourselves by developing our moral values and awakening those powers of the spirit, so that we can each reincarnation get closer to God and being perfect spirits. And that's what we learn in the gospel as well. The true spiritists can be recognized by their moral transformation and by the efforts they employ in order to dominate their bad instincts. So I focus a little more on the educate, because loving is a hard thing to do. We are still spiritual beings, much in the beginning of evolution. And we tend to have a selfish love. Love first to our biological family, usually, or our best friends. Love that puts others in harm if I have to choose my family, right or wrong. Then we extend sometimes to friends, maybe a neighbor. But it's difficult to love somebody we don't know. And it's even more incredibly difficult to love somebody who has done us harm. Forgiveness is a practice of love that we as a society struggle to embody and experience. But to be able to love, we need to evolve those skills within ourselves. And that's why I focus a little more on the educate, because love will not come naturally. It may feel natural for maybe a child or a partner or a family member, but beyond that, it sometimes feels very unnatural. And it's through practice and constant doing that something that is unnatural will become natural. So if we do the hard work of self-awareness, of learning where my tendencies are. And remember, self-awareness is not about seeking out what's wrong with us. That is a misconception that is very belittling. Self-awareness is about finding our potential. So we find out what we do well, and we bank on it, and we expand on it, and we invest on it. And we learn what we don't do well and utilize those strengths to transform our vulnerabilities and our negative tendencies. And if we start doing that, we are becoming better spirits. And then even if I'm not able to love my neighbor, those who have done me harm, I will be able to respect them. I will be able to coexist with them without hatred, without separation, without division. Because it's not about agreeing or being like someone else, but giving people the right to be who they are. Because ultimately, we will all reach the same goal of perfection. So nowadays, it's more about working within myself learning to control who I am. And yes, control. That's the first step because we are not yet able to transform. So as we get to know our strengths and our vulnerabilities, we learn to control both to then make a difference in how we act. And that will give us greater opportunities and greater probabilities of happiness. Because if you go back to the axiom, every effect has a cause, if my cause is based on decisions that are thought out through the prism of Spiritism and the vision of Jesus Christ, we may not do what we want, but we will do what we know to be right. And that's the difference to diminish our suffering. I have had plenty of opportunities in my life to not be happy, to be suffering. And I have in some of them failed and take the wrong path. But what makes the difference is this constant effort to dominate my bad inclinations. So it's not about not hating someone. It's about not acting in hatred. It is not about disliking someone. It's about not acting disrespectfully. It's not about not wishing somebody ill, because in reality we do. But it's about not doing them ill. That is what will make the difference and allow our lives to be better and give us a rest, like Jesus said. Being a Christian is not a matter of how to believe. It's a question of character, incorruptible character, strong and consolidated through long and persistent self-education work. So if nothing else can we learn from this lecture today is to know that I am in total control of my future and my happiness. And yes, and if today there's too many troubles, so be it. I was ill-prepared. I wasn't so well aware. I didn't have the knowledge, and I made bad choices in prior lives or in my younger years. But I can start today changing my way of thinking, changing the way I see the world, changing the way I respond to the situations that life brings to me. And be ready, because if you decide to change, God and the good spirits will give you the opportunity. And they will not all be as easy, but they will be the way for you to build a happier life. They will be the way for you to have more positive consequences than this. So the first step to starting that process of finding consolation is to know that you can be better and you can make better choices that will bring a better day in our lives. Because ultimately, it's all about who we are. And to finish, there is a passage, Malachi, verse 3, that says, "He sits as a refiner and purifier of silver." So there was a group of women studying the gospel, and they came through this section of it, and it said, "He sits as a refiner and purifier of silver." And they couldn't quite understand what that truly meant, the full impact of that. And one of the women offered to go and find what the refining of silver, what the process of refining silver was like. And she said she would go and get back to us and, let everybody know. So that week she called a silversmith and she went looking to get an appointment and watch him do the work. She just mentioned she just wanted to learn the process. So what she noticed that he did was he picked a piece of silver and he put it into the fire, in the heart of the fire, so that the silver could heat up. And she looked and she said, and she thought it was interesting because he sat there just holding the silver. And she wondered, what is that connotation has to do when it said that God, sits as a refining purifier of silver? So she asked the silversmith if it was true that he had to sit there in front of the fire the whole time, or if he could just prop the silver, then walk away. And he said, no, 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 I have to be here the whole time. Not only do I have to be here, my eyes need to be on the silver. And she wondered why, and she asked, and he said, if I leave the silver alone, even one moment too long, it would be destroyed. So I have to wait for the right moment to take it out, and I cannot, look away for one moment. And she looked at him and she asked, how do you know when the silver is fully refined? And he looked at her and smiled, and he said, oh, that is easy, when I see my image in it. So Jesus said he sits as a refiner and purifier of silver, meaning our guardian angel, God, Jesus, all of those who love us, they sit there as purifier, waiting for the day, letting us go through our hardships because it's the part that we cannot avoid. It's taking away our imperfections to bring our true spirit of perfection. And the day that we do look like Jesus, the day that we become perfect, which is the process of evolution, the day that we achieve perfection, that is the day that truly all suffering, all hardships, all challenges be gone. But if we understand that they are a process to make us better, it changes the way we feel about life. And it gives us the opportunity to reconsider our actions and work through the problems for a better outcome at the end. I hope that all of you can find some solace and hope knowing that we have an insurmountable amount of resources in the spiritual world through, like I said, our guiding angel, the message of Jesus, the understanding that the Spiritist doctrine brings to give us a certainty that all challenges are temporary and true happiness is achievable through the works that we do every day in our lives. May you be consoled. May you find some hope and peace. And may God and Jesus be with us always. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ligia. It is just great and enlightening discussion. But for everybody else, we have a few moments. We are now open for comments and questions from the audience. So, Luciana, hi, Luciana, asked us, she would love to read the book. Where can I find it? So I'm not sure which book. You may want to give them all your references.
So really, I used the Gospel According to Spiritism. That was my primary source. And you can find that if you go to the United States Spiritist Federation Board, we have a bookstore. You can actually purchase it, or you can even download it for free. Our goal is to disseminate the message. And I hope that you will look for it along the Gospel According to Spiritism. You will find our other books for the Spiritism doctrine, the Spirits book, and the Gospel would be the two I would recommend for you to start off with.
I think this is it, right? So let's see if we have another question. So hi, Yasko. Ligia, Yasko asked, she said, it is said that the lack of faith goes with increased doubt, almost as an opposite trait. Don't you think Spiritism is better to diminish doubt through its teaching rather than try to awaken or sustain faith?
So, like we said, faith, it can only hold if it meets reason face to face. That's what Kardec has taught us. And that's why one of my comments was, one of the beauties of Spiritism is that it doesn't expect us just to accept, it expects us to understand and to learn. So the teachings, they bring us the ability to process and understand the laws of God and how they impact on our daily living. And with that, it amplifies the way we see our life, knowing that life is not just this momentary period. Everything seems less difficult, or time makes a change. So if we gain this understanding, And if we have this change in perspective about life and we acquire the knowledge, then it makes our faith stronger, because then I understand. If I tell somebody, oh, just believe in reincarnation and you're suffering today because you must have done something wrong in the past, sometimes it's not enough. But if we understand the process of reincarnation, we understand the process of the laws of cause and effect, we understand that even if we lose a loved one, we will meet them again because life continues in the afterlife, and we acquire this knowledge, then we are able to change the way we feel. And that's part of the reason why I focus on the educate ourselves, because once again, feeling love, feeling faith, it's a very evolved sentiment. And sometimes it's difficult for us to grasp. But if we start off with understanding the reasons why and how God functions, it makes us more confident. And then we doubt less, therefore we trust more and we strengthen our faith. So I hope that answered the question.
I hope it did. So Kirsten, hi Kirsten. She asked, thank you, Ligia. Talking about Christ, what would be your suggestion on how to talk to people about him without the religious context implications?
So I think nowadays, people are much more open to spiritual concepts, not necessarily religious concepts. And a lot of times when people hear the word Jesus or Christ, they associate with some forms of religious, especially religious from the past. So one of the ways, first of all, to have anybody be willing to listen, Emmanuel already said, we have to exemplify first. So the first step would be to conduct yourself in such a manner that people would have an interest in knowing, oh my God, how do you deal with these challenges, or how do you deal with life in such a positive manner or such a confident state of being? And that's what will open up the space for you to say, well, what makes me feel this way? What makes me able to deal with life's difficulties? It's my belief system. Oh, really? So what's your belief system? And then you will have the platform, because you already established that whatever you believe in works because you're living it. You were going through whatever your challenge was, and in no moment did you lose faith. Did you become desperate? Did your life fall apart? Did you lose the joy of living? And that's powerful. And that's once again why the focus was on education, because if we believe it, we are an example, we live it, we make it true every day. And people will notice the difference by how you choose to live your life. And when they come to you, they will be willing to listen, because they will have seen the effect. Remember cause and effect. They will have seen the effect of this belief system of yours. And at that point, you will slowly introduce my faith system. My faith systems is Jesus, and then present Jesus from the perspective of Spiritism and not other religions. That is why it's such a challenge, because if we talk about Jesus, but we don't do Jesus, people are not going to listen, because they're going to go based on what they see. It's almost that line, the American line, you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. We got to walk the walk, and people will want to hear.
Very good. Awesome answer. Thank you, Ligia. Glaucio, hi, Glaucio, asked, what is the best way to extract the teaching in our suffering?
So each suffering is very individualized. If we get two people going through the same hardship, we cannot say that the reasons are the same. Let's say two people are struggling with financial difficulties because of the pandemic. One person may be suffering it because they've been too selfish and never wanted to share. And maybe the other one is suffering because they were too proud and they always needed to have the most expensive and the best, and they don't know how to downgrade. So there's in so many different, and it's very personalized. That's why if you meditate, if you pray, and if you work every day on seeing how you feel because of that, the person, for example, the person that has lost their financial means, because they were proud, they will realize that what upsets them the most is not that they cannot buy things, is that they cannot buy the type of things or the brand names or whatever it is. The other person that cannot buy much will realize that they don't want to share, they don't have to take from others, that they just want to have more and more for themselves and no disregard for other people. And in that journey, if you take a moment at night to reflect on it, it's like Francis of Assisi said, every night before I went to sleep, I used to put my head in my pillow and go back and look at my day and see where I had erred and make amends the next day. It's a similar process. If we take a quiet moment, be it in a shower in the morning, be it at night before we go to sleep, whether we take a break during lunch, you know, and kind of reflect on our lives and try to find out what is the feeling that upsets us the most, we will start to realize what are the propensities that we have that need to be changed. One simple analogy too that we can use and to tell you how difficult this process is. Well, and this analogy was easier before COVID-19, you know, let's keep COVID-19 out of it. But think of the cold or the, you know, or allergies. You know, people had allergies or they had a cold. They're very similar symptoms. You know, you got that raspy nose, runny nose, your throat is itching, you may have a headache, you maybe feel foggy. And if you take medication for a cold, but you have allergies, it's not going to really do you much. And vice versa, if you take for allergies and it's a cold, you're not going to get much better. With time, through repetition of symptoms and trial and error, you eventually will be able to figure out, okay, what I have is a cold and not an allergy and vice versa. And you'll be able to give the proper remedy. And it's no different for our moral inclinations. You know, every hardship and every suffering will trigger something, usually a feeling of discomfort, whatever that discomfort may be, hatred, envy, depression, you know, we can name so many. It's a matter of every day trying to study and fine tune it and hone in. And once we figure out what it is, that feeling that upsets us the most, now that we have achieved awareness, we can start to work on it. That's how we take the most out of suffering. And also, the positive way, suffering can bring very good feelings. It can give you confidence. It can allow you to realize that you trust and you truly believe what you believe. It allows you to see that you have strength that you didn't know you had before. So not all suffering are negative. It can be a beautiful opportunity of knowing yourself and becoming proud of who you are. So don't take all challenges as a negative thing. Embrace it, because it can turn into a beautiful moment that will comfort you and give you strength for futures to come.
Absolutely. So we have Marcelo Albernaz asking, what's the book about the husband, wife, and children?
I don't remember which one. I know it's one of André Luiz. If anybody who's listening remembers, sometimes the intuitions of stories come to mind. So I don't remember which one it was. I apologize. I can try to find out and eventually get back to you. I don't promise I will, because I may have to read all books. So if anybody who's listening remember, oh, somebody answered Action and Reaction. So the book, it's called Action and Reaction by André Luiz. Thank you, Kirsten.
Very good.
Very good. Yeah.
So, Ligia, Jose Marcos asked you, when you are deep into the suffering, is it too hard to keep out faith? How to keep believing?
You're absolutely right. It's extremely, extremely difficult. So Jesus already said, come unto me. But I also realized Jesus a lot of times seemed like this figure in space that is so far away. So we go back to one of the laws that we learn in the Spirits book, the law of society, which tells us that we are meant to live as a community. We are meant to live as a society. We are not meant to live alone. This is the moment that, albeit sometimes embarrassing, albeit we may feel proud and we don't want to reach out, this is the moment that we do have to reach out to our family, to our friends, to our Spiritist center, to someone, even a professional. I mean, it's easy for me to say it is my line of work, but there is a lot of discrimination and a lot of flagging of people that seek out mental health services. I think a lot of it's being worked on in society nowadays. But absolutely, if you don't know the way, if you can't find it, and if sometimes Jesus sounds so far away, and if we cannot understand, in spite of all the good efforts, we can't understand his messages, we need to look elsewhere. Whether, like I said, a family friend, a Spiritist center, a doctor, you know, sometimes when we're too down in our depression or suffering, we may need additional assistance just to get us out of that hole, just to get us out of the blackness and help us be able to see. So I strongly urge, reach out your hand, find someone, even if it's a 411 line of emergency. You are not alone. None of us are. And that message, it's funny, every time you study again, you learn something new, or different parts of it impress you differently. And for me, that beginning when Jesus said, "Put unto you my yoke." And for me at that moment, I felt like Jesus was embracing me and literally just tying himself to me and saying, "I will walk with you for as long as I need to, and I will pull you towards the right way. You just have to want to seek me out." So if anyone is really struggling right now, seek someone out. You are not alone, and you shouldn't have to feel like you're alone. The federation's here, your local Spiritist center. If you don't know where to go, once again, if you go to the site of the federation, there is a listing of centers near you. Call a friend. Don't think that you're alone, because you're not. And through the support of someone, they will get over that hump. Sometimes you just gotta get over the hump, and then you'll be able to walk by yourself eventually.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
welcome.
As you can see, www.spiritist.us. That website will have you links to the bookstore for those books that LIGIA mentioned to us. And if there's any additional questions, feel free to ask at that website. There is an info at spiritist.us. There are several people that put other questions, LIGIA. We just don't have enough time. I want to say thank you, all of you who were here. And I would say to you, from me to you specifically, thank you. Wow, what an inspirational talk. And thank everyone who watched this live talk. Those who have been following our weekly talks, please note that next Saturday, it will be January 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Please don't miss João Korngold. And João will be speaking about free will, which ties very nicely with today's talk by LIGIA. LIGIA, before we close the live, would you mind saying a prayer?
Sure, it'd be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Divine Master, guide of our lives, we are infinitely grateful for your constant sacrifice through love and patience, helping us to develop the ability to learn and make the decisions that will bring us true peace and happiness. Thank you for always being there and sharing so many others and so many teachings to reinforce our access to a path that will alleviate our challenges and our sufferings. But most importantly, for helping us to understand so that true faith and inexquisible hope fills our hearts, pushing us to move forward, giving us the joy of living letting us know that this state of suffering is only temporary, and that peace, love, and happiness are certainties for all futures. Futures in the near, futures in the far. It's only with immense gratitude that we can appreciate all that you have done by teaching us to live as brothers and sisters, by helping us to support each other, but most importantly, teaching us how to renew ourselves into better people. Thank you for the Federation for creating this moment and this opportunity for us to learn together and share. And I'll take this opportunity to personally to thank my family, my friends, and the Spiritist doctrine that has helped me to learn how to suffer in peace and faith, having the certainty that God loves us and that all He wants for us is our betterment. May we all one day be able to drink from the same water, having this faith and certainty. And may we all support each other in our growth. Thank you, and so be it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ligia. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Keep safe.